The central question on this appeal is the meaning of the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010. Do those terms refer to biological women or biological sex? Or is a woman to be interpreted as extending to a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate? By that I mean a person born male who now possesses a gender recognition certificate amending her gender to female, and sex to be interpreted as including what I will refer to as certificated sex. The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. But we counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not. As I shall explain later in this hand-down speech, the Equality Act 2010 gives transgender people protection not only against discrimination through the protected characteristic of gender reassignment, but also against direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, and harassment in substance in their acquired gender. This is the application of the principle of discrimination by association. Those statutory protections are available to transgender people, whether or not
UK Supreme Court rules woman means biological woman, a landmark blow to gender ideology or a sign of political reckoning. In a decision already sending shockwaves across the political and cultural spectrum, the UK Supreme Court has ruled that, for legal purposes, the term woman refers to a biological female only. The ruling, delivered with clinical precision, strikes at the heart of the ongoing national, and indeed global, debate over gender identity, biological sex, and the law's responsibility to uphold linguistic clarity in an increasingly ideological landscape. The case at the center of the ruling revolved around the legal interpretation of sex, specific language in statutes. In short, the court was asked to determine whether the term woman, as used in official government documents and legal texts, could include individuals who are biologically male but identify as female. The court's answer was unambiguous: no. The judgment stated that the word woman in its statutory sense, as currently understood within the legal framework of the United Kingdom, refers to an adult human female, defined by biological characteristics. In the eyes of the court, the biological reality of sex is foundational to legal clarity, particularly in contexts such as single-sex spaces, prisons, sports, and employment protections. For those still clinging to the tenets of radical gender ideology, this ruling is nothing short of a legal bombshell. It not only reasserts the primacy of biological sex in law, but also delivers a blunt message. Language, law, and reality are not to be twisted to serve ideological whim. This is not merely a technical clarification. It is a cultural moment. For years, British institutions have been tiptoeing around gender language, redefining centuries-old concepts under pressure from activist lobbies. Local councils, government departments, universities, and even the Nazis have flirted with the erasure of biological distinctions in favor of gender-inclusive terminology, often replacing woman with people with uteruses or birthing persons. Yet the ruling did not strip transgender individuals of legal rights. Rather, it clarified that legal terminology must be grounded in material reality. Rights can, and should, be protected. But as the court rightly stated, those rights must not come at the cost of erasing foundational definitions or trampling over the rights of women whose sex-based protections rely on clarity in law. Indeed, the judgment represents a major loss for gender ideology, precisely because it reframes the debate on terms rooted in common sense, not activism. It reinforces a principle long held by feminists and legal scholars alike. that you cannot defend women's rights if you cannot define what a woman is. Now that the judiciary has weighed in, the political consequences are impossible to ignore. Conservative MPs have cautiously welcomed the decision, framing it as a necessary reaffirmation of biological truth. Labour, however, finds itself yet again on the back foot, torn between a traditional working-class base increasingly hostile to gender ideology and an activist wing demanding ever-expanding definitions of identity. Keir Starmer, already accused of flip-flopping on the definition of woman, now faces a moment of reckoning. Will he side with legal clarity and public sentiment, or continue to appease the fringe of his party that sees biology as optional and feelings as law?
I don't see that far ahead in politics.
That's great.
I've given up soothsaying because I'm not very good at it. But what I will tell you is what we need to take a pace back. And yep, you see the polling telling us that reform is ahead, and you see the others all struggling around, and the Conservative Party too. The worst thing is Labour, of course, who are in a position that I've never seen a government go into within about a year of their time, which is so low you could slide a snake under it. But the main thing is that reform, at the end of it all, is a protest vote. I don't mean to be, I'm not denigrating anybody else. People have much to protest about, and they're angry. And that anger must turn, at this stage, to a party that hasn't been or isn't in power. I get that. I get that's why
But it
people
could sweep that party to power. People's anger is that palpable.
It might. My view is there is a message for this, and the Conservative Party has been through this before. It was at the turn of the 20th century when it faced the Unionists and a big split in conservatism. It's there when the free market debate against protected markets and free markets in the late 19th century. All of these things have happened before. Parties were split on the right, and then at some point they come back together. My key point is I'm not sure where things go in the next few years. I do think the Conservative Party has the organisational structure to be able to take this one through. But I have to say to everybody, I don't denigrate those who are protesting and saying they're angry and want to vote reform. I simply say, be careful before you jump too soon. The question really is the party you're looking at capable of forming government and making it work?
In the shifting sands of British politics, few statements have landed with more quiet caution and subtle criticism than the recent remarks by former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan Smith. Speaking candidly on the surge in support for Reform UK, Duncan Smith offered a sharp reminder to restless voters and anxious Tories alike. Reform, at the end of it all, is a protest vote. It's a pointed statement aimed not just at Nigel Farage's insurgent party, but at a growing segment of the electorate preparing to walk away from the Conservatives altogether. With the general election looming and the Tories languishing in the polls, Reform UK's rise represents a political threat that no one in Westminster can afford to ignore. And yet, Duncan Smith is urging patience, or perhaps more accurately, warning against rage voting dressed up as revolution. The surge in Reform UK's popularity, driven by disillusionment with the Conservatives and turbocharged by Farage's relentless media presence, is no longer a political sideshow. What once looked like a fringe protest party has morphed into a very real force in the polls, especially in working-class constituencies where Brexit loyalty and anger over immigration, crime, and economic stagnation have fermented into outright rebellion. But Duncan Smith's warning strikes at the heart of Reform's appeal. To him, it's all sound and fury, populist fireworks with little policy depth behind the smoke. People should be careful before jumping too soon into Reform UK's and Nigel Farage's arms, he said, implicitly questioning not only the party's ability to govern, but its long-term vision. The message is clear. Farage may be a master of rhetoric and rebellion, but slogans are not solutions. Protest votes don't pave roads, staff hospitals, or bring economic stability. And Reform's promise to blow up the status quo could leave Britain politically fragmented and institutionally adrift.